The following is a special presentation of the PDF Sports Network.
You know I'm right. The podcast that uncovers the origin stories of some of the biggest names in sports, media, entertainment, entrepreneurship, and so much more. Nick Durst here along with Joe Calabrese. And Joe, very excited for our guest today, fellow New Yorker. He has done what you want to do and moved to Las Vegas, so lots to talk about with our guest today.
Yeah, right. How many times have I tried to move away from New York? This place keeps pulling me back in. But we welcome somebody who's known in the sports betting sphere, something that you and I used to do. You could listen to him on Sports Radio, BetQL, BetUS. We welcome Jared Smith to the program. Jared, like Nick mentioned, jealous that you're out of Vegas right now. You got to let us know how that is with the weather outside. But what's up, man? How you doing today?
I appreciate the invite. It definitely was a big shift for me for many reasons, climate-wise, but just lifestyle-wise, coming out to Vegas from New York. I lived in New York for a decent part of my life. I moved around a lot for my other jobs, but I was born in New York and got married in New York, had some life experiences there. To come out here was a very, very different vibe.
So what were your sports teams growing up in New York?
Yankees. So my family grew up big Yankees fans. It was a family connection. My grandfather owned a company, part of a family business, General Sportwear, which was actually one of the bids to buy the Yankees in the late 70s. And Steinbrenner's family group actually won the bid. So we had a family connection to the Yankees. My grandfather was really close with Gene Michael, former scout. So we used to go to the games down in Fort Lauderdale. My family moved down to South Florida when I was about 5. So I used to go down to when they still played at Lockhart Stadium, their spring training facility, before they moved to Tampa. So I've been a Yankees fan since I was a kid. Football wise, it was mixed. My dad's side of the family was Giants. My mom's side was Jets. I ended up kind of falling in the Jets bandwagon, unlucky on that front. Basketball, Knicks, obviously the Nets were never really a big thing for me. And I was a big Rangers fan growing up too. I played hockey growing up. So, kind of a weird four. Usually it's Yankees, Giants, but I was kind of opposite.
So you got the same
Yankees,
four
Jets.
as Joe. The same four.
There you go. How about that? There you go, Joe.
And it's interesting. My family is kind of split. They lean Giants. However, about a majority of the 80% of the kids I grew up with were Jets fans. And
Yeah.
I had a next door neighbor who had season tickets. One of my best friends, his father in the 80s and the 90s, his firm used to get Giants tickets, and then over time it became easier to get Jets tickets. So
Yeah.
when I'm younger and I'm going to all the games, I'm always going to Jets games, right? So
Yep.
I adopted it. I'm a Yankees fan as well.
Most people where we are, which is weird, we're in Staten Island, are
Sure.
Mets Giants
Yep.
fans and Yankees Jets. So it's like the reverse of the rest of the city. So
Yeah.
I'm a Mets Giants.
Do you know why though? There's a story behind why it's usually Yankees Giants, because the Giants used to play at Yankee Stadium,
Right.
Yes.
and the Jets used to play at
Shea State.
So
Yeah,
it was it was a weird connection that really has no logic to it. Besides, they both played in the same stadium. It was probably easier back then to get tickets to both in the 60s.
And then you can live on Long Island, and then you'd be miserable Mets, Jets, and Islanders combo. That's even worse.
Oh, yeah. I have some friends. So I used to work on Long Island. One of my many jobs when I used to work in New York was at News 12 on Long Island. And I used to I covered the last Islanders game at the Barn. It was a playoff game against the Capitals. I think it was in 2000 and I want to say 15. Might be off on the year there, but yeah, that was the last playoff game and then I guess they've gone back to it since, but it's different now.
Absolutely. All right, so let's get this started. First of all, we are
Penn State. There you go.
There we
get
go.
that out of the way early. Wow, we do actually have a lot in common there. We have a lot in common.
I didn't go to Penn State. However, kids that I grew up with, very close with, a bunch of them went to Penn State. So they are our college of when college football is on Saturdays. We go out to watch Penn State games. So absolutely, we are. You majored in broadcast journalism, but then you also you took the Series 66 and Series 7 exams later in life and ended up working at Merrill Lynch as a financial advisor. So a bunch of interesting things going on there. So when did you know that you wanted to work in media, figure out that you were majoring in broadcast journalism, and then talk to us about the rigorous, preparation process to study for those tests, pass those tests, because they're insanely hard. and then your job working at Merrill Lynch. Two entirely different things right there.
Yeah, no, two almost entire. I tell people I lived three different lives. The first life was the grinding, being a broadcaster. It started really when I was in high school. My mom was a journalist. She went to Florida. She was a print journalist. And when I was in high school, so I moved around a lot when I was a kid. My parents got divorced, and I went to high school in Northern Virginia. I didn't know a soul when I stepped into Annandale High School my freshman year. Literally moved there the summer before my freshman year. And I asked my mom, I was like, what can I do to make friends? Obviously play sports. I played football. That certainly helped. And baseball. But she said, join the newspaper because you'll get to know everything. Like you'll go to all these events and you'll cover all these events. And you'll get to know people, and it's a great way, and also follow in my footsteps, right? So I joined the high school newspaper, and I became the sports editor, and that's where I kind of developed my love for sports journalism. I eventually started doing public address announcing for the high school basketball games. I played football in the fall and baseball in the spring. In that wintertime, I had a block available. I didn't really do anything. So I tried to get more involved in the sports community. I called the wrestling meets. I called started JV and eventually graduated to the varsity. And I knew I wanted to be involved in sports. I wasn't good enough to play. I was okay. Played quarterback in high school. I was, maybe like third team all district. Like I was like very average. And I knew I wasn't going to play sports in college. So I needed to, get involved in sports in a different way. And so all of my colleges that I looked for back then, it was a lot easier to get into school. And it's a lot harder now. I looked for all journalism schools. I looked at Florida where my mom went, didn't love Gainesville, North Carolina and Chapel Hill. I didn't have the grades to get in there. Didn't have the grades to get into Northwestern. Wisconsin was an option. Arizona State seemed cool. But when I went to Penn State and I visited the campus, I fell in love. It was like love at first sight. So they had a center for sports journalism that was very popular, and obviously just the sports there in general. I mean, good luck finding a better football atmosphere. And the secondary sports is really what sold me. I knew I was going to be calling high-level volleyball, high-level field hockey, high-level, at the time, the club hockey program was nationally ranked. I knew I was going to be involved in a lot of different sports, and I thought that was going to give me the best chance to succeed. And it was the best decision I ever made. I had the best 4 years there. After college, it was a mess. Interned here in Atlantic City, minor league baseball and Trenton Thunder. And then I moved to Boca. I worked for FAU, which was really cool before all the, Final Four stuff. Moved to Philly, worked at LaSalle, called their basketball games and their baseball games. And then I finally got my first gig on air in television. Right around the time I was about 26, 27 years old in Flint, Michigan as a news reporter. So I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I knew I was going to regret it if I didn't take the chance to go be on, TV. And I took that road, did a couple of years there, did a year in Northern Michigan as a sports director. And eventually I realized I needed to move back to New York because I hated Michigan, and I was from New York and I wanted to get back to the East Coast. A lot of my friends were there. So I ended up moving back. And I took an editor job at SNY, and I just kind of worked my way up from there and got an on-air gig doing some local news in Westchester at Bios 1, which is now defunct. And then I got the News 12 job, and then New York 1. And I worked my way up the local news ranks, which was challenging, covering news in New York City, shootings in Brooklyn and Mayor de Blasio's subway fare hikes and all the other crap that goes into, you see what they cover. It's not pleasant.
Wild 8 years with de Blasio in New York. That's for sure.
Yeah. I was actually one of my favorite stories that I did for New York 1 was when I think it was like they did like a big renovation on the subway and they made us interview him on the subway. I still have a picture of me interviewing de Blasio on the subway car, with 50 other interviews going around. But that was the kind. Now I did get to go to New York and go to Cleveland and cover the Yankees in the ALDS when they won Game 5. I think it was 2017. So I got to cover some cool sports stories too, but I wasn't doing, I felt like at the time, if I can go back in time, I probably would have realized I was making a lot more progress than I thought. But that also coincided with the time that I met a woman and I got engaged, and I started thinking to myself, what's the future here? I'm making, $50, $75 an hour covering news stories in New York. And I want to have kids and have a family and live in New York. It's just, and she worked in marketing. So it wasn't going to work. that's when I got an opportunity to go work for Merrill Lynch. It was actually, I was calling soccer games at Columbia at the time. And the guy who I was doing color commentary with was a former soccer player at Columbia, went on to be some financial advisor at Merrill Lynch. He's like, hey, listen, I told him about my struggles. I was like, hey, listen, we're looking for people who can sell. We'll teach you the finance stuff, but can you walk into a room full of millionaires and sell? That ain't easy. That takes a level of confidence that not a lot of people have. So I interviewed with their managing director. It was out in, forget what mall it was by, one of those nice malls in northern New Jersey. And just he liked me, gave me the job. And then, for about 4 months after that, Joe, I studied my ass off. I mean, every day. They let me study during work, which helped. I wouldn't have been able to do it if they didn't give me like time during the 9 to 5 to study. But that was a big challenge, big shift. But Merrill Lynch was awesome. I learned a ton. It really set me up. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was setting me up to be a gambler. Buying low, selling high, understanding the financial markets.
I mean, what is the stock market? The world's giant casino.
Now, Jared,
I didn't realize it.
Advise yourself start currently on your finances, or do you have?
I do. I don't have as much funds as I wish I did, but I do advise myself. It's honestly, it's not that hard to manage money. You buy 5 or 6 really good mutual funds, and then you don't touch it for a year, and then in a year you reassess and you reallocate accordingly based on whatever market
and
conditions.
Bonds guy.
You're a very conservative young man. I would advise someone in your age group to maybe get a little risky, maybe buy like 10% of your Bitcoin, but that's neither here nor there.
Bitcoin, I'm out. I'm out on that.
I'll be honest.
I think
it's managing money is not hard. Managing risk is the harder part, and managing emotions. Frankly, that's what gambling really is. That's what the financial markets really are at their core. You were managing people. Every client had a different risk tolerance, risk appetite. You had to profile them. You had to make them feel comfortable. And a lot of it was automated too. Now, after Merrill Lynch, I got another job in finance at AllianceBernstein, which is a much more, I'll call it white collar firm, a little more, white glove. And I think that taught me more about client relationships, but I didn't realize it at the time that I was being pre-opt for my betting job. Like that was, I didn't think it was, now I fell in love with journalism and broadcasting, and I didn't realize how much I loved it until I left it and I wanted to go back to it. And then it just so happened that I got an opportunity to go back to it. And I took it. And that was about 5 years ago when I make the transition back into sports betting. And it's been like a rocket ship ever since.
All right, so first let's talk about the wedding. Where was the wedding? When was the wedding? How happy was your wife that you were in Merrill Lynch at the time? How did that work out?
The wedding was gorgeous. It was at Liberty State Park. It was December of 2018, and then the marriage was over in a year. Mostly for, I'll call it, reasons outside of either of our control. Neither of us were very good communicators, and I don't think either of us really communicated what we really needed to each other at the time. I didn't really know what I needed at the time. When I wanted to get back into so I left broadcasting while I was with my ex. At the time, we were just dating, maybe slightly. We just gotten engaged, maybe. Then the entire time that I was making that transition into finance was also preparing for the wedding, getting married, the first year. It was a lot of transition. That next year after we got married in 2019, early in 2019, let's call it spring, she really wanted kids. I was like, whoa, like we're going through a lot right now. Let's wait. And then eventually I started to get that itch. I hate my 9 to 5. I hate selling stocks for rich people. I want to go back into TV. And I had an agent at the time. He was offering me jobs in Portland, Maine, and all these other cities, and she didn't want to move. And so things just kind of deteriorated to the point where she said, if you're going to go back down this path of broadcasting and TV and put kids on hold and put life on hold, like I'm not staying. And that's kind of how it ended. It ended very quickly. It was, again, we didn't have really any assets or anything to divvy up. And then the week after she walked out is when I got my first job in sports betting. It was almost divine intervention. It had to work out that way. And that's how I perceive it. And yeah, it was a very unique, very short-lived marriage.
So we always ask about representation and agents, right? For you, do you have one? Has it worked out for you? Because you come from that background now where you have to sell to other people. Part of that is selling yourself. right? So, do you have an agent, or have you gone into most places and represented yourself on your behalf?
So I'm self-represented now. I had an agent. I had a couple of agents over the early parts of my career. I don't really trust them. I don't.
Depends.
I
Depends.
don't. Now, granted, the ones that I've had maybe were just bad ones. But they've never helped me. They've just kind of absorbed me, if that makes sense. All of the jobs that I currently have were all jobs that were on my path. No matter what an agent would have done, those jobs would have come to me regardless.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel right now about an agent. Do I lose nights of sleep thinking about what else could be out there that maybe I'm not attuned to? Sure. But I think the best advice for people with agents or people who are thinking about getting an agent, it's not necessarily about what they can do for you. It's about how they manage you. I wish I had an agent today not to find new jobs. I wish I had an agent today to buffer me from difficult conversations with my bosses. Like, those are, I think, the biggest value adds an agent can give you, where your boss wants you to do something, instead of you being the one to say no, they say no.
Mm-hmm.
And it just buffers you from awkward conversations. You're almost ignorant to it. And that's actually a better place to operate and do your best job. I wish I didn't have to deal with some of the crap behind the scenes. Now, not to say I have all this crap going on behind the scenes. Actually, the jobs I have now are very self-sustaining, very much, very easygoing. But prior jobs were not so much. So it's a journey. I think it's different for everyone, but don't just have an agent because you think you need one until you actually feel like you're having difficult conversations with places. That's when you really need one.
Absolutely. Good advice there for anybody
Very
listening.
good advice. Yes.
So you mentioned it before, when you, after college, you're grinding it out, you're in Atlantic City. I mean, things basically come full circle here. Work started off Atlantic City interning, now you're in Vegas, but Atlantic City, Trenton Thunder, Florida Atlantic, LaSalle University, Michigan, Long Island, moving all around. You've been all over the place. So what is your least favorite place that you've lived? Sounds like Michigan, because those winters are probably brutal. And what's your favorite place you've lived? And New York cannot be the answer because everybody usually picks home.
Yeah, no. New York is not. So I would say the least favorite job I had was absolutely the Flint news reporter job. It was also the most important job that I've had. It was the first time I was ever on live TV and being paid to be someone who delivered live television. But it was also miserable. I mean, you can imagine in 2013 what Flint was like, what it's like today.
Couldn't even drink water.
Could not. You couldn't do anything. It was really a difficult, especially from someone who was from the East Coast who had no family in Michigan. I literally knew nobody.
Yeah.
But it was the most important job I've ever had. But it was also the worst. And I got out of there quick. Like a year plus, I was gone. Michigan was tough. I was far away from home and I felt alone in Michigan, more alone than I feel in Vegas. I don't feel alone in Vegas at all. Vegas is my people. I would say that's been the most important or most like happiest place that I've been. New York, I had a lot of pain in New York, a lot of pain, personal, not just career, but personal pain. I left New York. That when I moved to Vegas, that was the first time in my life that I moved to a place because I wanted to move there, not because I needed to move there for a job or for a lifestyle or for something. So in the middle of the pandemic was really hard because I got divorced in September of 2019 and then the pandemic was 6 months later. And then my dad passed away of cancer like 2 weeks after that. Like March of 2020 was like rock bottom for me, literally. And then in about a year later, actually, no, about 6 months later, I moved to Jersey City, which was like kind of like a step out of hell. And then in September of 22, it's been 2 years, basically, I've been out here in Vegas. So these last 2 years have just been completely transformative to me. I mean, I had a lot of pain leaving New York. It was rough.
Where'd you live in Jersey City?
Right on the water, Newport. It was actually that I really missed that apartment. I had overlooking the skyline. I had to get out. Like, in March, obviously we were locked down. And then it slowly started to open back up. But by the time we got to like June, I felt like I was in prison in my mind. My dad just died. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Like, it was tough. It was really tough. So I had to get out. Like I felt like I was like escaping New York, like the Kurt Russell movie.
Yeah.
But I couldn't go too far just because of work and everything. And so I thought that would be a good kind of high ground, like a high apartment overlooking everything. I felt like I started to climb myself out of a really tough time in my life. That was a really interesting, move to go to Jersey City. I could have moved anywhere. I could have moved back home to Florida. I really could have gone anywhere, but I chose to stay. In fact, move really close to where I got married, like literally down the street, which was weird, but it just felt like the right place for me at that time. And then when I moved to Vegas, that also felt like the right place for me at that time.
So Jared, for my buddy Joe here, I mean, he must feel like he's looking in the mirror or listening to himself because you both grew up, the divorced parents, you like the same sports teams, you played the same sports, you both from New York, you both moved to Jersey City, you both spent some time in Michigan, you both wanted to go to Vegas, you both have people, family in Florida. So Joe, I mean, this is getting a little spooky here. Halloween is here, and it's like I think 5-10 years in the future, you're going to be like you're going to be in Jared's spot. I mean, it's just meant to be that we're talking to Jared today, and he's basically the same life story as you. I mean, obviously everybody's a little different, but a lot of similarities here, Joe. How are you feeling?
His beard's a little thicker though.
Yeah,
I've worked many years on the beard. It's been 2 years of curating this beard.
Yeah, I was gonna say when mine grows a little bit more, it looks a little more unkempt. So I like. I'm the kind of the wacko who gets his hair cut like once every 10 days. That's ridiculous. Okay. I know, but it works for me. But yeah,
whatever works for you, but I don't judge.
Yeah, when you said the whole I wanted to move to Florida thing, and I have family in Vegas, right? So it's like the family that lives in Vegas, I'm very close with. And when Nick and I went there a couple of years ago, like he'll tell you this. A year or so prior, I went to a bachelor party in Scottsdale, Arizona. The year the Bengals and Rams played in the Super Bowl, it was like 20 of us there. The year after we went to Vegas, like that dry desert heat, man, that's for me. Like that 90, 95 degree where you can kind of just walk outside and the air is clear, man. Like I would really love to be there someday, man.
Well, my body responded to it. I mean, so it's funny that you said the bachelor party. I went in April before I moved out here in like August of 22. In April of 22, I went to a bachelor party in Scottsdale also with one of my close friends. And I remember getting off the plane. I swear to God, Nick, that's crazy that you say that story. I remember getting off the plane and thinking to myself, damn, this weather is like really nice. And that was the first time in my life, because I always thought, when you work in media, you think to yourself, yeah, like you want to end up in New York or LA. Like those are the two cities you want to end up in. So because I wasn't a West Coast guy, I always thought New York. I'm a New York fan. I'm a New York guy. I want to end up in New York. Like my energy throughout my 20s getting back to New York was soul tunnel vision. But that was the first time in my life where I thought to myself, maybe I'm not supposed to be in New York. Maybe that's not the right place for me. And ironically enough, the fact that it was Scottsdale is weird. And then when I went back to the Super Bowl the following year, I remember driving to Arizona from Vegas. I did move to Vegas prior to that. And I remember driving to Arizona and thinking to myself, man, Arizona's that's another place that I could see myself living. It's the dry air. It's the lack of humidity. I'm always outside. I mean, I've lost like 50 pounds in the last year. A lot of that was diet based, but I'm also always outside. You're always outside.
Your sunlight, walking around. What people don't realize about Arizona too, quickly before we move on, is that when you get there, Phoenix, Tempe, Scottsdale, they're all within an hour or so drive from each other. Like
Scottsdale's
on a highway and you go, and it's just Scottsdale's popping because the downtown area, it's exploding, right? Tempe's a little more of like the college vibe with Arizona State over there. Phoenix, the major downtown area, a lot of great restaurants over there. But you're always out in the sun over there, and it's what clouds are there, what rain is there? You know what I mean? Outside of like those really humid, bad, like 110 degrees during the summer.
Yeah, you get a bad couple months, but also I don't live anywhere near the strip. Like people are like, oh, you're moving to Vegas, you're going to become more of a degenerate. Like the opposite. Like I'm around it all the time, where it used to be when I would fly in for 4 days. I need to spend every waking moment at the craps table, at the casino, at the sports book. Now I live across the street from one. If I want to go roll dice for 10 minutes, make $100 and walk out, that's it. Like it's actually reduced my, urgency to go be a degenerate.
Right.
And
I
just
cram it all in.
yeah, going from New York to out here, like there's really no comparison. Like I recommend everyone who comes out here to rent a car and drive around. Like it's such a different city than what the Strip offers if you really explore it.
Yeah,
that was great.
Great place.
Love that. All right, back on track here. I'm looking. Okay, so working as an internet managing director for a bunch of stations, right? So we talked about going back and forth, right? The explosion of digital media. Talk about what those jobs entailed.
Yeah, those were interesting jobs. I think when I was going into college sports, mostly in the 2010, 2011 time period, right? I graduated Penn State in 2008. And then I really started getting into college athletics a little bit after that. And I was basically, what you would do is you'd be hired, what they would do for the radio broadcasters, because there's no money in radio. So they would say, okay, you can come call like at FAU. All right, you can come call the baseball games, which is like, you're going to go to the College World Series or maybe go to the, the Super Regionals because they're a really good program. But you're also going to run the website and you're going to run the video streaming and make sure all the games are streamed, right? So it was just like a big transition to these schools, these like mid-tier D1 schools running their own television stations and video programs. And that taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about, how to market content, how to produce content, how hard it was to create it, to shoot it, to edit it, and to write it. I mean, everyone wants to be on TV. Everyone wants to be on air, but writing and the foundations that go beyond it, the editing, the technical capacity you need in order to be successful in this media world, I think goes beyond saying. And you need to do all of those things well, because if you only do one well, you're going to spend so much time on just editing, just writing. You're not going to be able to grow enough on air to be able to show people your stuff. So you have to be good in so many areas so you can efficiently get through the work. You're doing the work of 4 or 5 people, most of these, media people that start out at the lower levels of sports. You need to be incredibly versatile. And I think that's something that is lost on a younger generation that just kind of wants to be a TikTok star overnight.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, obviously you've done a lot of play-by-play stuff, Rutgers, Iona, Columbia. I do some play-by-play for some Northeast Conference schools, East Coast Conference schools, and I'm not just showing up and calling the game. I have to engineer the game. I got to operate the cameras, do the scoreboard. It's a lot of work that goes into, this 2-hour game or whatever. But do you miss anything about actually calling games themselves? And what sports were you able to call over the years?
Yeah, I miss play-by-play a lot. I think everyone who wants to do TV needs to do radio first. Television is easy. If you look the part and you are, well groomed and well put together, that's the easy part of television. You either have that or you don't. You can't fake, attractiveness or, looking good on camera. You can try, but it's usually hard. The things they can't teach you in TV is the ability to talk and to say anything. That's really, when they say talent, that's really what talent is, in my mind. It is the ability to have a conversation with someone while other people are recording and thousands, millions, whoever's watching, and to make it seem like it is seamless. Like there is no gaps, no awkwardness, no weirdness. It's hard. It's really hard to be that natural. That is, to me, radio teaches you that, because the air is just out. You have to fill the time. You got to fill it with something. Baseball is really the best. It's the most conversational. It's the hardest to call. It's the most prep. You have to have the most notes. Hockey was really challenging. I thought hockey was the most challenging. I'm not a hockey guy. I played hockey growing up, roller hockey in Florida, and then I graduated more to football, baseball. And then when I went back to when I went to college, I started calling the Penn State Icers. This was before the Pagulas came in and, gave them all that money, and they were, a club team still. But I remember how difficult prepping for hockey was. Football is actually the hardest to prep for, but the easiest to call, because it's like 10 seconds and then you get another 40-second break to kind of reset. So I think if you're I thought basketball and volleyball were the best rhythm sports. I think if you want to be a play-by-play guy, I think you should go to your local basketball gym, high school, and call a basketball game. I think that helps you get into a rhythm and get into a groove. Baseball is the hardest. I think baseball, you have to know the sport so well to fill that time. I think that's the one that, only the pros should really do.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny because like I do all the sports. Baseball's my favorite sport to watch and play. Basketball is my least favorite to watch. But my favorite to call is basketball because it's just so natural. You can remember the names by the end of the first quarter because same people. Baseball, especially when you're solo and you're pulling these teams that are awful, really is really bad because it just drags on. It's just really rough. So yeah, basketball is definitely my favorite to call, which it's just ironic because it's my least favorite sport to watch, but it's certainly a grind, that's for sure. Especially when you're calling these games by yourself and the games are not necessarily very close, or it's hard to spot the numbers, or they don't really have a great SID giving you the proper information and the pronunciation. So a lot goes into those broadcasts, more than people realize.
Yeah, baseball's tough. I remember baseball. The only reason why I really got into it is because I got that gig doing minor leagues. And minor league baseball life is really hard. I was paid $800 a month. I made sales calls from 9 to 5, 9 to 3, and then we would do the game. And we go home at 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. We'd be on the tarp crew. If it rained and the team was gone, they'd call you in and pull the tarp. Like that is literally the boot camp of broadcasting.
And I think it's crazy to say, but it's definitely easier to call Major League Baseball than it is any level in the minor leagues because the players naturally. Minor League Baseball, it's really, really rough. Those bus rides that you have to do.
Oh yeah,
rough.
Those are fun.
Well, let's talk about how all that experience benefited you in the long run. You worked as a host and analyst. Now you're in the sports betting space. You worked for Spotlight Sports, Stadium, Fox Sports Radio, BetQL, like I mentioned. Talk about the various gigs that you've been able to kind of put on your resume here. Now that since you kind of entered the sports betting sphere, and who approached you, how to host this show and et cetera.
Yeah, it started again in September of 2019. I got a text message from Greg Sussman, who is the VP of production content over at SportsGrid. So Greg and I go way back to Penn State, actually. Greg's best friend from Manalapan, New Jersey, is my best friend that I was a frat boy with at Penn State. And so Greg used to come to our fraternity house in college, and we used to bet on games and hang out and do all stupid frat boy stuff. And at the time, PASPA was just repealed the prior year. And at the time, SportsGrid was still the Fantasy Sports Network, or they were just transitioning over from the Fantasy Sports Network to SportsGrid. And he texted me, he's like, hey, we're making this transition to, all sports gambling content or mostly sports gambling content. I remembered you were a big time gambler back in college, and you were a broadcaster. Would you be interested in doing a show? And I said, hell yeah, because I had just gotten divorced and I was like rock bottom. It was like this, gift from above. So I went in. It was. I want to say it was like week 1 or week 2 of the NFL season. It was like the middle of the week. It was like early September of 2019. And at the time, they were still doing the shows from this Midtown studio right by Times Square. And I did a show with Gabe Morency, who's still doing their shows for the network. And it went really well. They really liked me. They kept me on for a long period, doing night shows. Eventually, I transitioned to doing the morning show with Ariel Epstein. And then I moved on from the network. I got another job at Pickswise to be their lead betting analyst. I thought it was a good opportunity to kind of move forward and become like more of a gamble. Like, SportsGrid was still kind of radio. I thought that was a good opportunity to get really into the betting space, really hard into it. And that led me out here to Vegas. And then once I got to Vegas, the Fox Sports Radio gig fell into my lap. Again, that was coming to me no matter where I was, no matter what I was doing. That thing it was on a crash course. They were getting ready to build that show, and I was on a list with a bunch of people, and I did really well in the interview and got that gig. And we've really taken that network and that partnership with BetMGM and really run with it over the last 2 years. They just gave us an extension. I had a little, flirtation with VsIN. They gave me some freelance work for a little while. They've now moved on to different ownership and different situations, so I'm not with them anymore. But the situation with BetQL happened very organically. I was up for a prior role at BetQL a couple years ago that I didn't get, but they said, "Hey, we really like your stuff. Just be patient." And then I filled in for them last year with Brandon Marshall doing that Sunday show over at Mandalay. And the boss really loved the chemistry with Brandon and I. Me being a former football player, I kind of talked ball with him really well. I know how to talk football and not just gambling, because it's not just a gambling show. It's a football show that airs Sundays during the after. It's basically red zone for gamblers. And that show's been really impactful. And just being able to interact with the professional gamblers here in town and do the BetUS stuff with two professionals and really still be in that world is really helpful to me. But I consider myself a broadcaster who bets. I'm not a professional gambler. It's hard sometimes. Social media doesn't really see the difference, but there's definitely a lot of blurred lines right now with gambling and media, I think, that are very intriguing.
So you make the move to Vegas. At that point, did you have anything lined up, or you like, I'm going to move here, I'm going to lay a foundation, and then everything will come to me? How did that process?
Well, Pickswise was remote. So I told my boss at the time, I'm leaving New York. I do not like living in New York anymore. I want to move to Vegas. It's going to, increase moving to Vegas while you're a lead betting analyst for a company, in my eyes, only increased my credibility as a betting analyst. So I thought it was a mutually beneficial move. And it was, because I was able to interact with a lot more professionals here in Vegas. But that gig, I already had a job remotely when I made the move. So there was no starting over career wise. Since I moved here, I've gained things naturally. But when I moved here, I was strictly moving here for personal reasons because I wanted to be in Vegas. I wanted the climate change. I wanted to be immersed and put myself in the best environment possible to succeed here.
Well, listen, I think this is good advice for you, Joe. Maybe you can. You'll be blooming out to.
Life doesn't start till you leave your comfort zone.
That's really true. Yeah, I've attempted to make a couple of moves away. Personal things keep me back. Funny enough, you mentioned gains. Let's talk about your gains, right? Your remarkable fitness journey, getting shredded and jacked. You're out.
Am I shredded? Honestly, I don't consider myself shredded. I honestly don't.
I think you're in good shape, Jared.
I think you're in very good shape.
What is the secret sauce?
Intermittent fasting. Honestly, so it started in May of 23, a year ago, about 15, 16 months ago. I was doing a segment for Live on the Line, Stadium at the time, and it was on my screen here. You can't see it, but my command center has a gigantic 70-inch TV. And I remember watching it, and I'm like, no. Like that guy's never going to accomplish the goals that he has in his mind, which is national TV network gig, doing what I'm doing. And I was like, all right, it's time to make a change. I was always the fast food guy, Wendy's, delivery. I mean, I was like, in New York City, I would order a takeout every night, pizza, bagels, everything. And so I finally said, no, I'm changing. So I looked up, diets and plans, and I tried things in the past. I'd always been someone who was exercising a lot, but I started reading into the intermittent fasting. And first of all, it's super cheap because you're not eating anything. So it was budgetary wise. All right, this fits. I don't have to buy a bunch of new food, new shit. And I just started really slow. I just skipped breakfast. Instead, I just drank black coffee with a splash of unsweetened almond milk. And I would go as far as I could possibly go. Noon. It started noon. Then I got to 1. Then all of a sudden I was fasting the whole day for 24 hours.
Wow.
And I noticed it the first month I lost 10 pounds, and it just flushed out of me. I was 236 was the peak, May of 23. And I remember in 60 days, I was down to 215. I was like, holy shit, this is crazy. And then once I had that taste of the success and I started to look at my body and say, I can tell that it's working. That's when my OCD brain just said, just keep pushing it and see how far you can take it. And now it's 60 pounds. like crazy. And I'm not doing anything that drastic. I'm eating steak and eggs for dinner every night. I just don't eat a whole lot of carbs.
Right.
And I only eat for 6 to 8 hours a day, usually between noon and 8, sometimes noon and 6.
Do you avoid sugary drinks too? That's important. A lot of people I know.
It's all calories in, calories out.
Right.
Everything they tell you that, oh, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. That's a lie.
Yes. A lie.
Your body.
I've always known that. I never ate breakfast when I was a kid.
I'm a big intermittent faster as well. I never eat breakfast. I eat my first meal of the day around 1 o'clock, maybe later, depending on.
That's why you're thin. It's the biggest lie and you know why we're told this. And I've gotten kind of spiritual since I've moved out here. I read a lot of books on energy. Now
you're really
with crystals.
Now you're really talking Joe's language.
I fucking love this guy.
I know, but but there is something to discipline. I think the intermittent fasting is really healthy. We don't realize how much our body needs to cleanse. It's an uncomfortable feeling when you're hungry, but again, no gain, like nothing good happens in life until you leave your comfort zone. Like you have to be uncomfortable every day because it's your body cleansing itself. But we're told all these lies because Kellogg's needs to sell breakfast cereal.
Yeah.
Like the real health is moderation and discipline. You can eat whatever you want, just a little bit and in a certain window. But you can literally eat whatever you want. I had a veal chop at Allegro at Wynn last night. That was the size of your head. Wow. But then I fasted for 18 hours after that. And now I'm starving. It's like I've never eaten in a week. Like you can eat whatever you want. It's just the discipline. And then once I learned discipline, real discipline, well, then all of a sudden I turn into a runner because I could never run because I had no mental discipline for it because I got bored. But then I was like, no, you can do it. Just do it. And now I ran 5 miles today in 90-degree heat. Like it was nothing. Because it's just in your head. It's all discipline. Everything around you can be controlled by your consciousness and discipline. Like it's all an energy field and we have control over all of it.
Very nice. So Jared, you just mentioned a place on the Strip, but what would be your go-to place to eat on the Strip, and what is your favorite buffet on the Las Vegas Strip?
Well, the buffets are like a thing in the past now. The Wynn buffet. So Wynn is my favorite hotel on the Strip, hands down. I think the Strip is changing a lot. Even in the 2 years I've lived here, I talk to guys that have been here 2 decades. They say, unless you need to go to the Strip, stay away from the Strip. The Wynn is right on the edge of the Strip. It's classy. I think it's the only place I frequent often. I really like the off-strip casinos. Durango's gorgeous. They just opened it up. Red Rock, fantastic. I'm sure you've heard about that. I live by the M, very under the radar kind of spot. There's just so many great gems off the Strip that are great. But Circa's a downtown spot I would recommend. And Cosmo, if you're in a party vibe, our generation, 20s and 30s, I think Cosmo is probably like the cool hip spot. But Wynn is usually where I go to the most.
That's where Joe was hanging out last time we were there.
There you go, bud.
We spent a lot of time in the Wynn because the buffet is amazing.
Yeah, the Wynn buffet is really good.
The next question was, what was going to be your favorite Las Vegas hotel? Then I was going to say, well, Nick and I, we know people who work out of the Wynn, and we've been there, and I had this whole story with my cousin. One of her friends does high-end real estate out there, knows people who are behind the construction of the Wynn, so there's really cool history there.
Nice.
So it's like we're biased to the Wynn because the Wynn is the best. And then the other places that I loved were Cosmo and Caesars, right?
Yeah, so Bellagio's nice too. I think I prefer Bellagio over Caesars, I think.
Okay. My uncle always loved the Bellagio.
Yeah. I think that's a good list.
Right?
I like the hotel rooms at the Palazzo at the Venetian.
Yeah, I used to stay at Venetian a lot when I was younger because we had comps there. Cosmo is kind of the 20s. Anytime I came to Vegas in like my 20s, late 20s, early 30s, I'd stay at Cosmo. But now that I've moved here, I go to the Wynn. I'd say at least once a month. We
have our friend Johnny V. I think he likes the Venetian over there as well.
There you go.
Well, his last name is Venezia, and they have the Venezia Tower, so he goes there for free probably.
I know, right? Okay, so we'll pivot here because you talk about spiritual stuff. I got to ask because I'm an astrology guy. I need to know what your sign is.
So I'm a Pisces sun.
There we go.
I'm a Virgo rising. I'm a Scorpio moon. I relate to Virgo. I'm a very emotional person.
He knows he's big three, Nick. absolutely love this guy.
And I'm a little sensitive as well.
Oh
I
yeah, I
think
could see that.
I think the hardest thing about my signs with my job is they don't teach you in broadcasting school to cope with random strangers and other people that you kind of know who just hate you. Like, just absolutely hate you publicly, loudly.
Jealous.
That is the hardest thing I think that I deal with in my career. Doing the job is easy. I wake up, I study numbers, I look at games, I do the matchups, I do the shows, I get to be myself, my personality, and then I go to bed and I do it all again the next day. The social media grind is really hard, but my particular signs and my pivot points in my astrology do not lend well to public criticism, but it is a big part of the job. I think it's the hardest part of the job for any young person that deals with any, anxiety or mental health issues. Learning to cope with strangers who hate you is really, really hard. Really hard.
Spoken like somebody who's got Virgo in their chart.
Yes.
Those Virgos. I know my big three. I think Nick knows his big three now after
I just know I'm a Gemini. I don't know.
You're a Gemini. I think you're a Cancer rising. That's fine. For me, I'm a Cancer sun, Virgo moon. So I think the Virgo moon comes out of me a lot, the very analytical part of me.
Yeah.
And Scorpio rising. So again, it's like similar elements, similar signs, so there's definitely a vibe there. Whenever I bring up astrology to people, my big thing I always tell people is that you look at the horoscopes, right? Sometimes people are like, oh, I read a horoscope, I don't really relate to it, blah, blah, blah. But like anything else, it's a science, right? Yep. So I tell people all the time, look into it. It helps you better understand yourself. If you don't relate to it, great. If you do and you really get into it, it's something that I think will change your life.
Jared, do you happen to take precaution with your bets when like Mercury's in retrograde or it's a full moon? Like, are you getting that into it?
That is the first time anyone's ever asked me that question. That is such a fun question. No, I am incredibly logical and precise. Not all the time. I make stupid Dumbo bets, as my friend Steve Fezzik calls them, because I'm a human being. But I'm not a superstitious individual. I don't believe that anything that outside can impact what I do. Like, I'm very much self-centered, like in the most positive way possible. Like, everything that I put out comes back to me. So if I put out something negative, it's going to come back to me negative. So I'm always trying to put out positive energy. And so that would be very counterproductive if I was just like, oh, I'm not going to make this bet because it's going to lose. Every bet I make, I expect to win.
Yep. One last Pisces point. I don't know if this is a coincidence or not. I grew up with a couple of guys, Pisces people, red hair. One of my friends who I used to work with, his son, born March 8th, red hair, right? Do you see that? Like with other
I didn't
people?
know I was a ginger till I started growing a beard, Joe. I was a blonde growing up. I'll show you pictures of me growing up. Actually, there's a picture of me right here playing hockey. I don't know if you can see it on the screen, but I'm blonde.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm a blonde.
That's interesting.
The ginger has come later in life. It has come mostly here on the beard.
Right.
Yeah, I can't explain it. Maybe it's the sun. Maybe it's just natural
I
over
think so.
time.
Well, I also think being out there where I think the air is clearer too. When you're out in the sun, it does different things, to the I guess the shade pigment in your hair. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know if there's any science behind that, but again, I noticed the red with the Pisces thing. There's a correlation.
Could be. I'm not sure about that. I haven't done enough research on that one.
All right, so it doesn't have to be during Mercury retrograde, but let's talk about some of your favorite bets that you've ever placed.
I would say, you mean like the biggest wins or like most
biggest wins, most memorable, right?
Most memorable is the easiest one. It's the biggest bet I ever made. It was on the Mayweather-McGregor fight. I remember I had to literally maxed out my credit card and my mom's credit card, depositing offshore to get down on that fight. That I want to say I bet like $5 or $6 grand. It was like minus 500 to win like $1,000. That was definitely the biggest risk I've ever made on one bet. It was a lock. But the biggest win in terms of like most exciting was absolutely 3 years ago, actually right around this time, 3 years ago, September, the Shriners Open, a golf tournament here in Las Vegas, ironically enough. I was not living in Vegas at the time, but I was doing a show for Sports Grid at the time with a Scottish golf analyst. Her name was Diane Knox, or Diane Knox Ballas. Now she got married, but it was Russell Knox's sister was a golf analyst for this network we used to do segments with. And she came on the show and she said, Martin Laird, 250-1. This guy's winning the Shriners. And he was another Scot. So I was like, I trusted her advice. She knows her countrymen well. And this dude won the frickin' tournament, 250-1. I only put like $25 on it and won like, $6,000, but, hands down. And it won it in a playoff too, which was just, have a 225-1 going in a golf playoff. I mean, I was literally on my hands and knees with every shot. It was an unbelievable sweat. That was absolutely like the peak win for me, but I did have a really good one this past draft. Got some really good information about the Raiders and their strategy, and it could have been a little bit off the beaten path. And we bet the Raiders to draft a tight end at 60-1, and I put a whole $100 on that. So you do the math. That was another really nice win. And another one of the more recent ones that I've had. We also had Kyle Juszczyk to have the first reception in the Super Bowl at 24-1. That was also a really nice win. It was a good year for us in football. Football and the draft and the Super Bowl was a really good year for us because of some of those nice windfalls at the end.
Very nice. What do you remember as far as like when you made your first bet? Was it high school, college, and what did you bet on?
Before then, I think it was my freshman year of high school. I want to say I was 14. I remember I was in my mom's basement stealing her. I was terrible. I steal her credit card all the time, buy clothes, buy shit. And I deposited offshore at I think it was either Bodog or sportsbook.ag. And I used to bet baseball because I played baseball in high school and I didn't know enough about the football back then to really bet it. But baseball, I knew. I followed it every day. And so I bet a lot of baseball back then. I bet Nerfies back then too. I remember betting Nerfies when I was like 18 years old. It's just ironic because it's kind of like what I'm known for today. And I didn't even really know what I was doing back then. But yeah, it was early years of high school. And then I remember the year the Giants won the Super Bowl in 2007. I was a junior in college and I really was, I had a little bit more of a bankroll then. I remember I rode them in the playoffs every year or every week that year. They were a big dog against Dallas in that divisional round. And then in the NFC Championship game, the game that Tom Coughlin's nose froze off, they were a dog then. And then they were even a bigger dog in the Super Bowl. And I remember I just keep rolling it over, betting them a dog, rolling it over. And that was the first year where I thought to myself, I was 21. I was like, maybe I could do this. Maybe I can actually do this. And then, I putzed around a little bit in my 20s, focused more on work. And then in my early 30s, when I moved to New York, that's when I really started to get back into gambling. That's when the content space around 2013, 14, 15, that's when places like the Sports Gambling Podcast, Bet the Board, started to pop up. And I started to consume that content. And that's when I really kind of dived back into it as a hobby. But yeah, early high school. I mean, I've been doing this now, 20 years.
Yeah. So obviously nobody wins 100% of the bets they make.
No.
So I'm curious, do your friends get pissed at you if you're betting advice? Because they're texting you, WTF, Jared, like this is ridiculous. You told me it was a lock. How does that go with your buddies?
Well, the buddies understand.
Okay.
Because they see me get it from other people. They see the shit I get from normal, like random people.
Yeah.
I don't get any hate from my circle. They all understand. The hate that is spewed at me from outside of my circle it's intense. It's intense, yeah. Nick. Almost to the point where I've had to like quit social media a couple times. Not like in like a crying way, but in a, I know I'm about to reach my breaking point. I need to shut it down and take a day off or a week off. Because you'll tweet out something that's dumb or maybe not 100% accurate. And because of the status that I'm at now, it wasn't as big of a problem earlier in my career. Now I have to be incredibly careful about what I put out. if I'm even the slightest bit wrong about anything, I will get absolutely destroyed by the sharps. I call them as my air quotes. It's all the people that are professional gamblers, or at least attempt to be, that aren't on TV doing it. And it's just the projection of the jealousy that gets thrown at me anytime I'm wrong. Now, women get it way worse than me. Don't get me wrong. The prominent women in our space, even if they're right, they're getting shit. I have to say something that's wrong for me to say something, for me to get shit. But yeah, I think that's the biggest, like, it's just social media. Twitter is just a really toxic place. It really is. That's really where I get it the worst.
Fair enough. So in your life or your career, what would you say is your I'm right moment? What I mean by that, it's a time or place where you wanted to pursue something, you asked somebody for advice, so that person was like, Jared, that sounds like a terrible idea. Why would you do that? And you were like, you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. And in the end, you will see why it is that I'm right about this. And I can tell you I told you so.
He was moving to Vegas. Yeah, I got a lot of pushback from that, especially from my mom. You know, it's been, my parents split up when I was 13. And it was really just me, my mom, and my sister for most of my life. My dad was kind of a backseat. He wasn't really around a whole lot. And then when he passed in 2020, obviously then he wasn't around at all anymore. But when I moved to Vegas, my mom was like, you sure? Like, you don't have any family out there? And it's not that she didn't believe in me. It's just, it was a big move. I sold all my furniture. I packed up the car with my dog and I drove across the country. Like, that's a big move, especially at age 36. But I knew it was the place for me to be. Like, I knew it's where I needed to be. My soul was, I know that sounds spaghetti, but my soul was calling me out here. And everything that's happened to me since I moved out here is just confirmation of that. Right. Yeah, that was really the moment. I remember when, and again, it happened in Scottsdale, Arizona, of all places. I remember thinking to myself, I shouldn't really be in New York anymore. But it wasn't, it was actually another friend. I told a friend, I was like, hey, I'm thinking about moving to Scottsdale. And my friend was like, dude, you're the gambling guy. Move to Vegas. You're going to go to the desert. Move to Vegas. That was like July, like 2 months before I moved. And it almost like hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, holy shit, that's really, I should move to Vegas. That's really smart. That's exactly where I should be. And from that point on, it was just like, all right, that's it. I'm moving to Vegas. And there was nothing anyone could have said that could have stopped me.
And since then, you've just been attracting that positive energy.
Yes.
All these doors are open for you.
Yes.
Like, no, right.
And that's usually how it works.
It's destiny. Nick, I'm sorry. At some point, I'm going to be moving to, whether it's Vegas, whether it's California, I'm going to be leaving you.
Go ahead and open more doors for the podcast, having us at each coast.
Yeah, but that means no more softball, no more pickleball soon. You know, like,
sacrifices that we make to grow the brand.
You'll find a new pickleball partner out here.
That's fine. Well, we'll hang out once I get out there. We'll do some fun things. But Jared, this was really fun. Really appreciate you coming on. You know, we wish you the best of luck with everything. Please, let's stay in touch. I feel like I met a kindred spirit today with everything that
absolutely,
you know, I'm about. But like I said, we wish you the best moving forward. We know we have a couple places where you can find you on social media, even though, you know, Twitter is the worst. Now it's called X, but
no, it's where you need to find me, because even though it's a cesspool, it's where everybody swims, and it's my cesspool, and I just have to build up an immunity to it. I honestly, I have. It's a lot easier to navigate now than it was a couple years ago. But Twitter at Jared Lee Smith, Instagram at Jared Lee Smith. I think those are the two best places where my content is most consumable. And TikTok at Jared Lee Smith. I would say those three. I do post on TikTok sometimes too.
And where can we watch you or listen to you?
Yeah, Fox Sports Radio, Saturdays, 9 to noon Eastern. Obviously, college football is front and center now. We'll transition to NFL once we get into January and February. And then in the March, you know, college basketball, and then summer NBA. And then we just kind of do the cycle all over it again. But that's a really fun time slot. You know, Saturdays, of course, kind of sets us up for the weekend. So I recommend everyone to try to take a listen there. During the NFL season, I do a Sunday afternoon show. It's a second screen show, meaning you have Red Zone on, you have the game on, and then you have BetQL on your other screen or your other device. And I do it with Brandon Marshall, a former Broncos linebacker, won a Super Bowl with Peyton Manning. Incredibly insightful stuff. I get to talk gambling. He talks football. We kind of weave it together. And then I do a podcast every Wednesday with two professional gamblers to NFL pros for BetUS, which is a offshore book, but they have a YouTube channel, which has actually grown into a really great source of content, not just for the NFL, but for all sports. And it's great to be able to kind of really dig into the gambling stuff with them. And that's every Wednesday afternoon at 3:00 Eastern.
Very nice, Jared. Thank you so much for your time. That's going to do it here for this episode of You Know I'm Right. For our special guest, Jared Smith, my co-host, Joe Calabrese, I'm Nick Durst, and this has been You Know I'm Right.